Hello, everybody. Mic works, right? Wow, all these people came to see me. Just admit it, you didn't want to do the traffic. I don't blame you. It looked pretty nasty out there, and I think it was raining. And we know how it is in the DMV when it rains around here, right? Find a bar and just camp out. So actually, I prepared a little bit of a presentation. We'll kind of just warm things up a little bit, and we'll go through a live-ish demo, which means we'll tempt the demo gods. First at bat. Okay. All right, I have to speak, so it came up. So here's my picture playing Star Wars with the kids at King's Dominion, if you put that up there. I actually did a book at my last cloud provider, and that was the picture I used. When you're the editor of the book, you get to choose your pictures. So, as Karina said, I am a principal cloud solution architect. I'm with the One Commercial Partner Group, which means those of you, for instance, that are like at Unisys with Victor, that's where I know Victor from, I work with you to put solutions out on Azure, and then we go to market with them. So kind of give Victor a plug for Cloud Forte, which I have a sticker up on there. So there's your plug, Victor. My passion is DevOps. So when I get into DevOps, one of the things we talk about is governance. Mostly as far as, hey, with DevOps, we're rearing and ready to go. And the folks in governance are like, whoa, hold on a second. And I'm here to say, you can do both. So let's talk about it. Why governance? Kind of in the spiel. Eliminating, starting off in the beginning, you have folks coming out of the CTO's office, the DevOps, or at least the Dev and Ops, that are saying, hey, we've got to transform and innovate our applications that we are going to deliver to, in this case, in this room, in the federal government, our citizens. So different agencies, not naming any, but agencies that work with the public, for instance. I think USCIS is up here on our panel tonight. They have a lot of publicly facing applications. I know I used to work at ICE years ago as both a contractor and a Fed, so we had a lot of public facing things, a lot of pressure from Congress. We had an application we were putting out, it was going to be featured on CNN. So everybody's trying to figuring, oh my goodness, how is this thing going to scale when everybody's clicking on my application? So a lot of pressure, a lot of folks looking down at the hill at what you're deploying. So when we do this, we got to do it smart, and we all have a budget, right? We can't just sit there and push a button, boom, there goes the Terraform script, and I've got 450 virtual machines doing God only knows what. So I can't be spending all this money, but at the same time, I got to get my stuff out to market. I've got congressional mandates. I've got folks that want to be able to pop open their phone and see how long the line's going to be at TSA. And then I'll decide, do I go to national or to go to Dulles, depending on what that looks like. And then, of course, one of the many tools out there, like I said, was my passion, which is DevOps, how to get that stuff out there, not just fast, but also being able to redeploy it. And when I was at ICE, for instance, back in 2008, I was doing DevOps. We were an IBM WebSphere shop. We were actually rolling code. Continuous builds for us were probably once a month, which was pretty quick, but we actually rolled out 45 new applications or releases or features to existing applications between November and January, which we all know that's kind of hard. Well, actually, it is when you don't have change control boards that are fully staffed. You just push it right through. There's the secret. So if you didn't learn anything tonight, just submit your applications in November when everyone's going on vacation, and you'll get them into production. Speed ATO. Eggnog ATO, right? Okay. So what we're going to talk about more specifically around governance is why is it needed? Cloud sprawl, right? We can't just have this stuff out there just to have it. So like I said before, and I found a creaky spot on the floor. Like I said before, you've got your developers, you've got your operations folks. Depending upon where you are in your journey to cloud, you have the DevOps teams, or you've migrated or merged those operations and DevOps or developers together to form your DevOps teams, and they want to push stuff out. Well, we have change control boards and policies and things like that. We need to know exactly what you're pushing, why you're pushing it, what you're pushing. And what we really need here is to work together to deliver speed and control. And we can do these with a lot of the built-in services that are in the cloud, more specifically the Azure cloud that I'm going to talk about. So these products that we can look at, Azure Policy, Blueprints. We have something called Resource Graph. I know it's not in GovCloud. Pretty cool. Ask for it. Talk to Karina. Hint, hint. Hey, we're working on it. Exactly. So a lot of stuff you see in commercial cloud, if it's not in GovCloud, Ask. Let us know, hey, chances are it's on the roadmap. If not, tell us your story. We want to get it in there. Management groups, and then more importantly, costs. So many times, both as a Fed or a contractor, and this even goes in commercial world too. First thing is, what's the cost? What's the cost going to look like? How do I spread it out? Especially we start talking about variable cloud economics. What does it look like? Well, it depends. Well, you go tell your CFO it depends and see what he or she says to you, right? It depends. So I know that I'm really going to be kind of scratching the surface tonight, but if everybody wants to get the cameras out, here's the address to remember. Instead of doing tiny URL, we have our aka.ms/governance docs. You can go into a deeper dive on governance on Azure. But we're going to scrape the surface a little bit tonight, and I'll kind of show you this in demo form, kind of if you're familiar with how the cooking shows work, we'll put the raw stuff in the oven, and I'll pull something out that's cooked and hopefully delicious. So going into management groups, one of the things you want to do, like I said, I'm going to fly through this, is how are you going to lay this thing out? So with Azure, you're familiar, you have your tenant, you have your subscriptions. Subscription owner is king, right? How do we do that from an agency point of view, whether it's cabinet level in my components or within my component and the different lobs within the component? How do I give someone enough juice to do what they have to do, but no more? And remember, the subscription owner is all. Do you want the CFO to have the full control in your subscription? Probably not. But you don't want to just give it to a DevOps engineer and say, here you go. And next thing you know, you've got an express route built. Where did that come from? So we can lock that down. And some of the things that we can do that with once we set up that hierarchy as far as what do our applications look like. We have central IT. Within central IT, we've got our production systems. Then we have this dev test thing over here that people build and tear things down. We don't quite know what they do, but we know that we can't lock it down like production because they have to innovate, right? Well, we can quasi-lock it down. We at least have naming standards. We have costs that we have to go after. Stuff in dev test, unfortunately, is not free. So we have to label it and be able to track it. So in management groups, we'll set that up, and I can apply core policies at the top that says, thou shalt name your stuff, or it doesn't get built. So we can do that, and then we can force it down with RBAC. So I don't want my dev test folks being able to touch operations and vice versa. I can do it with the RBAC roles-based access, Azure AD. Driving down further, Azure policy. I may want you as the WAN engineer to set up express route, but only in this subscription, not in this subscription. I can do it there. Cost management, we'll get into that, as well as the person speaking after me is going to go a lot deeper in cost management as well. And then Azure Blueprints, Azure Security Center. So we can look and see, gee, what do I have to protect? And more importantly, is it protected? Like I said, I'm mostly going to go into blueprints tonight, but just kind of to familiarize you with some of the stuff around governance on Azure. This would be a visual of what this would look like, or laying out that management group hierarchy and then applying it to your different subscriptions. So RBAC controls, for instance, easy thing to remember, security principles, users, groups, anything that really, service principles, anything that's going to have a role assigned to it. It's going to do something. That role definition, that's going to be written in a JSON, it's really a JSON policy document. It's going to pretty much say, what do you do? Am I a backup operator? I'm an administrator. What do you do? And then more importantly, what are you allowed to do that to? Or the scope of the management group. You can do it here, but you can't do it there. One link to look at, aka MS Azure IAM. Just take a quick picture on it. Better yet, the last slide that I'm going to have, take a picture of it. It has a link to a workshop and the full version of this deck. I have a big camera to remind you to take a picture. Resource locks. Bottom line, if I don't want you touching my stuff in production, especially without a change control ticket, I'm going to lock it. Can't touch this, just like MC Hammer said. Some people are like, he went there. Yes, too legit to quit, right? So Azure policy. This is where I can go through and turn on either stuff that's already built in, or I can write some custom policies of my own. These are written in JSON, and I can set those up and say, hey, thou shalt tag your resources, or you can't build them. I can also do stuff within the guest, but I'm not going to dive too much into that. Just hit the Azure Governance links. You can go into that. It's not in GovCloud yet. Please do ask for it. Applying the policies at scale. So in other words, just having a bunch of scripts and stuff out there. Don't have to do that. One central location for it, and you apply it out to all of your subscriptions. This is what it looks like. It's in JSON. So for example, a policy definition would look like this. Thou shalt put a cost center in there, or you can't build this. Very, very, very important. So you're not scratching your head saying, gee, what is this? Is this dev test, or is it the door system? Don't want to turn it off and find out. Not that I'm speaking from experience. Naming convention. So I can also have a naming convention. In addition to cost centers, I can force you to put a prefix. If you don't do it, or in this case, a suffix, if you don't do it, I'm not going to let you launch your stuff. SKUs, I can enforce that as well. You will use certain VM sizes. So in this case, I might force the B series because they're cheap. And then going on to blueprints. Told you I'd fly through this. Questions at the end. So blueprints. With the blueprints, this is where I can go through and I can actually automate it out. So instead of just having a build document written in Word, Word's not compilable. It's not a compilable document. You can't compile it. So they're all over the place. Nobody reads them anyway, right? So what can I do is I can actually write this. And when I write it, I can, of course, bake in, hey, this is what my environment's going to look like. So infrastructure as code, good stuff, repeatable. As well as, if you can get your change control ruler to read JSON, less writing. Policy definitions, how I'm going to lock it down, and I can, of course, put in my service principles and everything in there. It's all automated. I check it into my code repository, push the button, and voila, roll it out to my different subscriptions. I can start dev test. I can use those cool tags, blue-green, do a blue-green deployment with Azure DevOps, bam. That's how I do patch management. Every week, I just run a new environment. Come see me for a DevOps discussion. I can tell you all about that. But right now, we're just talking governance. How it works, the cloud engineer creates the blueprint. They put their artifacts into it as far as saying these are the things that I want to enforce. And these are the things that will be initiated by default. These are the things that, you know what, I'll let you do, but I'm going to tell the boss that you've done them. So I'll let you roll it out, but I'm going to tell the boss that you've not followed our policy or our best practices. And then after I've built this, I push it out. I push it out to the management group, or I can push it out to the subscription. Always better to push it into management groups. Then we have something called Resource Graph. I know it's not in GovCloud, but this thing is really cool. If you have thousands of subscriptions all over the place, you don't want to pull up the console and try looking for this stuff. You want to do, how many folks are familiar with James Path querying, J-M-E-S Path, James Path, jamespath.org. So you can actually do JSON queries. You can do JSON queries, and it'll get a lot of the information for you. But what you can also do is go within the Resource Graph Explorer. I know it's in commercial right now, so you can play with it there. One day it will come into GovCloud. But you can go through and write searches that are very close to SQL queries. We call them KQL, Kusto, like Jack Cousteau. Kusto query language. You can use the Kusto query language, and you can go through and then say, you know what, I want to see all my Windows machines in these subscriptions or in these regions. Bam, there they are. Oh, I want to see Windows 2008, because that's going away soon, we hope. Or it should be going away. Or you should be bringing the stuff on-prem and bringing it and rolling it out into Azure, so you can get a few more years out of it until you migrate properly. We'll go serverless, but that's another talk, I know. So, thinking about accountability. So, we talked about your management teams. We've talked about finance teams. They worried about costs. But then the app teams, you can also hold them accountable to keep constantly improving their product, automating it, being able to do more builds, multiple builds, 10 builds a day. There's a company I used to work for. They did, right around Christmas, they did probably 100,000 builds a day once upon a time. But a build could be just changing a color on an icon. That's one build. Think speedboats, not battleships. Azure Cost Management. This is what it looks like. It's on by default. The best part, it is free. So you take that and you combine it with, slide is coming up next, which is the It's part of the Azure. Why am I just slipping past me? Now I'm curious. Of course, I've gone too far. But it combines in, we have 5 pillars of, why am I slipping on this one? I'll get to you. Age. So let me go back here. I apologize. I went a little clicky here. So it's on by default. It's a nice graphical interface. It'll also work with cost management. It'll actually go through and tell you where you can save by using reserved instances and things like that. And Justin's actually going to go a lot deeper, so I'm going to kind of fly through that one and get to the demo, which is why you came here, right? And the pizza. So we talked about management teams, finance teams. Really what they need is what's in the circle. They want to see what's going on and hold those accountable to who's deploying it out. And more importantly, optimize it. Why? To bring those costs down. So it'll export out to your storage account, which means you can then pull it up in Power BI, get a nice graphical on it, because a CSV file, who wants to read those, right? Those kind of make your eyeballs bleed. You can also, if you're multi-cloud, which I'm sure you are, or you will be, we can actually do cost management up against AWS. So if you have stuff running in AWS, all it is just hitting the AWS billing APIs and pulling that data in so you have one dashboard to look at your cloud spend in both places. Like I said before, you want to tag these. It makes it much easier, not just from a CSV point. It'll drop it into the CSV, but that CSV is then brought into your Power BI dashboard so you can then split it out. Otherwise, if you don't tag these things, it's going to all look flat. And if your CFO already knows how much they're spending on compute, they want to see how much is dev test. So Azure Advisor, that's what I was searching for a few minutes ago. Azure Advisor, so there's the 4 pillars of Azure Advisor. We talked about cost. I'd love to talk to you about the other 3, however, a little pressed for time tonight. But this will actually go into things like high availability, security, and performance. But with cost, for instance, we're just going to say, hey, you might want to go with a smaller VM size, or you may want to go with that reserved instance. This is the picture slide. Everyone, let's get the cameras out. My good buddy Farida, who works with me, she's out of Dallas. She has a nice workshop on Azure Governance, and it's up on GitHub, and it also has the full version of this deck, as well as some really nice labs that you can do, so you can become an expert on governance. And with that, it's demo time. So let me just, can everybody get the picture? All right, let me just double check here. Make sure everybody gets the picture. Everybody's got the picture. I want to make sure you leave with something. And then you get the full deck. We're all good? Okay. Going once, going twice, sold. All right, demo times. Let me close this out and put our deck back. We're not going to save you. And we're going to break open the Azure portal, which is already opened, where it was. Aha, there we are. So we are in the portal. So, like I said before, blueprints. I can go into blueprints. And I can either go right here and just start creating a blueprint. And what's so cool is I can actually go in and I can either start with one from scratch or I can start building upon my good friend 853 revision 4. Anyone ever printed that out? It's like these old things, they used to call them telephone books. And in the DMV, we had like 2 of them for the yellow pages. It's about that big, whereas NIST Rev 2 was like that. They put all the controls in them. So you can actually start building with that. Financial services, there's all kinds of them that you can start with, or you can start building your own. But there's another thing that you can do too, which you can go over to, and here's a link to go to, or actually just do a Bing search for it, or a Google search, for FedRAMP Blueprint. And that'll take you over to the Service Trust. And when you go into Service Trust, you can go down and hit Reference Architectures. So, of course, there's IaaS, there's PaaS, Data Warehouse, Data Analytics, all kinds of little ones to get you started. I, of course, clicked on IaaS, but I could go to PaaS as well. Click on IaaS. When I click on, I got all the documentation that I can use to start building my ATO and all this cool stuff. But more importantly, because I'm a developer, which means I'm lazy, I take code and repurpose it, and hey, why not, right? And then, of course, it doesn't work, and I say all kinds of bad things. So, but that's another story for another time, and haven't had a beer yet. So, with that being said, what I would do is I'll click on this one right here. I can get the implementation guide, but more importantly, like I said, I'm a developer. I want to deploy this. So, of course, I can read through it, which I'm a developer. I don't do that, blah, 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 blah. And I get here. There's a nice picture. Cool. This is what I want to build. And as an architect, how many architects we got in the room? Yeah. So when you hand the developers the Visio, what do? Something like that. This doesn't compile. Pretty much doesn't compile. They don't care. I can't stick it in a pipeline. I need to stick it in a pipeline. I want you to hand me a JSON template. I want you to hand me a Terraform job or something. But more importantly, I can actually go down here, keep going. There's all kinds of good stuff in here. I'm a developer. I don't read. But I do read that. It's a button. It's clickable. I can click it. So I'm going to click it. I'm logged in. Is it going to make me log in again? No, it's not. Thank goodness. I was fighting with this all morning. I'm going to pick a resource group. And we'll do that. And I will put in an Azure Key Vault here. So I just go through here. I'm going to pick out my VM sizes, et cetera, and then I'm going to click here. I will give you one of my 5 children if I'm bad, and then I'm going to purchase it. But like I said, this is like the Betty Crocker cooking show. So I stick it in the oven raw, and it's going to come out cooked. So after it runs through, while it's in there baking, this is really what it's deploying. It's an ARM template written in JSON. Of course, you can also, instead of call it JSON templates, there's also ways you can call it command line, use Terraform, which Terraform rides on top of ARM, so I'm not telling you to use one versus the other. It's just an easier way to do it. And then at the end, what it's going to look like, it's going to go through, it's going to run through, and you're going to see the little back and forth. In this case, I can go into the activity log, and we can go through here, and it's going to think and think and think and tell me that it did all these really cool things. What does that mean to me? Developer, blah, 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 right? What I want to do is, let's go to the virtual networks. Did you create me a virtual network? Because I'm a developer, I lied. I'm going to have to read a little bit. So what is this thing going to deploy for me? Alrighty. Okay, here's what you're going to deploy for me. I see the pretty picture, but I read things. So I'm going to get some Azure virtual machines. I should get some IIS boxes, some SQL boxes, some AD boxes. I'm going to get a Bastion host. They're going to be an availability set, some subnets. Let's see if this deployed for me. So the first thing, I have Joe Cool. I'm a Snoopy fan, but I fat-fingered it and typed in J Cool, so it is what it is. So if I go into J Cool, I look and see I have what looks like a virtual network. Okay. Did you deploy my subnets? Yes, you did. There's my subnets. What about connected stuff? What do I have? I got a bunch of NICs. Let's see what we got here. I got a PDC and a BDC. Wow, we still call them PDCs and BDCs. Okay. SQL load balancer, great. And let's see, I've got network interfaces for some SQL boxes. I've got 2 web boxes. I've got a management box, and I've got an application gateway. Well, if we did this thing right, I should be able to take the IP address off of the application gateway, and I should be able to get something. Let's take a look. I should be able to get an IIS page because I didn't load up an application here. So let's see, application gateway. Aha, there you are. Let's just get you. And let's copy that. And since, we're trying to get FedRAMP certification here, we're going to put that S on. Oh, let's see what happens. Oh, it's not secure. Of course not. It's self-signed certificate because I'm not going to pay. I'm not going to pay VeriSign some money. So we do have a web page that's up and going, deployed from that blueprint. And if it were a web application, so what would happen is I could use this blueprint to roll everything out. Everything's in place. All I have to do is go into my SQL box, load up my tables, and then go up here and actually have it, instead of going to the IIS welcome page, have it actually go to the front page of my application, and voila, I have a nice application going. Let's see here, kind of like this. which I don't have that one. Actually, it should be. Yeah, don't have that one going. I was going to show you an application that I have running. So fortunately, what I have is this, which is the IS box. Which, granted, sure, it's the IS page. It's not pretty and everything. But if you'll notice, I'm hitting that application load balancer, and then it's just load balancing back and forth between the two boxes. So everything's there. The bones and everything are built. If you will, I just have to load my application up on it. More importantly, I can go into Azure Active Directory. I can start adding in my administrators, as well as I also have some of the ones that were built in there for me based on the template. I'm not going to go into all of that. Security Center. I've loaded up. These are for some baselines that I've loaded up. So out of the box, there's going to be a little bit of red. You're going to have to remediate some of those things. This box will get you, this blueprint will get you there 99% of the way. Then there's some things that you'll have to do to carry it across the finish line, if you will, because as we say in the cloud world, security is a shared responsibility model. We're going to take care of all of our pieces for you, and then you layer your security on top of it and turn these reds over into blues. As well as we also have, let's take a look and see. One more thing I wanted to show you. Azure Monitor. Let's see here. As well as I've gone through and I've loaded up some configuration policies, if you will. So I've set it to audit. So I have some nice little reports that I can then go through. So I've given you, with the Azure Blueprints, remember to go out and Bing, if you will, let me go back to it. Yes, I want to leave. So what you want to do is just go out and look for Azure FedRAMP Blueprint. Just go out and Bing it, Google it, whichever one you like, DuckDuckGo, whatever. It'll take you over to this, and then from there you have the nice blue button to push. And like I said, that'll get you started. And then of course your infrastructure developers, if they're like me, they're going to steal that document and they're going to repurpose it, and they're going to make it to where it blows out 100% of their environment off the get-go. And with that, I'm done. I'll turn you over to Justin. Let me just load the slide deck up.